Okay, we're recording.
Do we call this to order? Okay. All right, tonight I'm going to start out with the landing first, and then we're going to get to we're going to review the minutes from last week, December and October. We're going to invite some comments and then get on to two training topics. Before we have a case review of WAC. City of Eugene is located on Callegari, the traditional indigenous homeland of the Callegari. Following treaties between 1851 and 1855, Callegari people were dispossessed of their indigenous homeland by the United States government and forcibly removed to the Coast Reservation. They descended citizens of the Confederated Tribe of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribe of Siletz Indians of Oregon, and continue to make important contributions in their communities in the city of Eugene and across the land we now refer to as Oregon. We express our respect for all federally recognized tribal nations of Oregon. This includes the Burns Paiute Tribe, the Confederated Tribes of Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians, Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon, Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians of Oregon, the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, the Coquille Indian Tribe, the Cow Creek Band of Umpqua Tribe of Indians, and the Klamath Tribes. We also express our respect for all other displaced indigenous peoples of Oregon. Okay. Are there amendments we need to make for beginning from October to December meetings?
I'll move that we accept both months if no one has any changes for either month.
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Yes, you did.
All right. There's some opening comments from board members or commission liaison.
I'm reporting on last month's police commission meeting and maybe that it's something to report. It seems like it is. We had a presentation by Sergeant Kara Williams on recruitment, retention, and promotion. I think was the focus of it, and during the course of her presentation, an officer who was present as the union liaison asked a question about the departure of at least, I believe, 4 women police officers from Eugene to Springfield in a very short order, and raised a specter that there's possibly something going on at the department as far as women and employment. After the meeting, one of the Springfield officers wrote the police commission and said that the information the commission received at the meeting in response to why there were these departures wasn't exactly the way that the departing officers saw it, and that of course has raised questions. And I think it's just in a exploration and investigatory stage, but I asked a question and I'm expecting a report at the next meeting on Thursday, actually, about recruitment and representation on some of the special units like SWAT and drones and things like that. I don't think there's particularly much, if any, participation by women, and I'm not sure about minorities, and that's what I asked to get a report on. So I think that it's possible that the police commission, might choose to explore this issue a little deeper. And I think it's just a report. I'm reporting on what happened, and it was unusual. That is not typical that would happen. I think the officer the union rep, I think, stuck her neck out, and I think it's important that we appreciate that in a public setting and we follow up. So that's and then it's a good point to say that I chose to pursue an appointment to the police commission, and not to pursue a reappointment to CRB. So if I'm appointed, if they want me, they can have me, and but that I will be transitioning perhaps into that role. So that was the choice that I made. So that's part of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
I wish I had a report on the Human Rights Commission, but the main activity that I have with the Human Rights Commission was trying to get notifications from people. And so that's something to discuss when we talk about the liaison role later down the lines, how to be, I don't know, more strategic, how to infuse some sort of direct line of communication from that body to this body more actively. And I talked to someone about that. So that's my report.
I experienced that too.
Yeah,
No comments.
Sorry, I just looked at the way.
Okay. Bernadette, do you have comments?
I just want to note that it's also Black History Month and tomorrow is Oregon's birthday. That's all.
Happy birthday. I just kind of in response to Alan and Clay's comments. I'm wondering if you should put off the election of the liaisons until we can find out if Alan.
I think that's fine. Especially, I think, since he expressed interest and isn't able to be here tonight, so I don't think there's any kind of.
That's the state.
Yes.
That makes sense. So.
Historically, we've done those elections at the year, so. I think so. If.
Well, that was gonna be my comment, because knowing that Monique wanted to be part of that. Even more things came to light. I mean,
This is a change to the agenda. It's up to you.
Motion to table the liaison elections to next month.
I seconded,
All in favor?
yes.
I
I think I was before that.
Robert, you wanted this.
Chair should-
Just for you,
What's that?
saying probably the chair shouldn't.
Excuse me, Robert would. Thank you. Okay. Did we get all the reports? I don't have it open, I know, but we have a training topic, community courts.
We're rather informal. You haven't been able to see that so far, so, Judge Gill, do you wanna sort of? This is Judge Gill, he's our municipal court judge, and I'm so sorry. Yes, so Judge Gill and Sarah are here to tell us a little bit more about community court and community. Is functioning, but we don't have a lot of run-ins.
Yeah, so I have slides as much as we speak and talk and both for you guys and then kind of open up for any questions that you may have. So I don't know if you guys want to keep it informal, if you want me to throw the slide, it's really a choice either or. We've been doing this for a while together off and on, so me versus kind of a baby. So do we just keep it informal? Maybe throw the slide, it's your choice.
I'm worried about the technology of.
Okay, that is completely fine. That's actually more our style, so it's fine. Yeah, yeah, I can email them. They're real simple. Really, the greatest part is there's pictures of participants and volunteers. Here's the fun for it, and the new provider room. So, as mentioned, Judge Gill is our presiding judge, and he also is the community court judge. And I'm court administrator. Judge Gill's been here since. Here did you start the court?
I started pro tem back in.
became the presiding judge officially in 2019. And then I came in 2019 as the specialty court supervisor. So I was running all the programs, specifically community court Saloni here, but we have a lot of programs for us for a municipality. Probably more programs than most courts in general. And then I came to the court in 2019 and then was an AIC for 2 years and had been the court administrator for the last year, basically. So so a little bit about the court. He's been here longer, so yeah, Eugene Municipal Court. We have 6 judges and about 28 staff. We have multiple programs, like I said, that we run. We have that people usually want to hear about, which is community court. So we're going to speak about today. We also have dockets called, we have a mental health court docket. We have what used to have a problem solving docket. Now we have opportunity docket that is also working with a lot of the unhoused and people that are not quite unfit, but have fitness issues and maybe needs a specialized program. And then we have the 370 docket, which is a fitness docket, which is increasing pretty dramatically over time and is one that people tend to hear. And then we have other dockets that are just traditional courts. We handle misdemeanors, traffic violations, parking, and
General fund stuff.
and general fund stuff. Yes, and so that's kind of just, but I think today everybody wants to hear about community court. And so, do you want to start with the history?
Sure.
Okay.
So I'm Greg, and actually way back in the day, I appeared a couple of times in front of Alan here, so it's good to see you again. It's been a while. Congratulations. And community court generally, found that a lot of folks feel like they know what community court is. They've heard the term a lot, but not everybody knows what the community court actually is or what it does. I've heard answers ranging from it's kind of like a glorified parking court to a place where folks are judged by members of the community in whatever they're doing. So it's kind of all over the place. So to set the record straight, community court is a diversionary program within the court that is meant to connect an offender with service providers, right? In order to reduce recidivism ultimately, but really raise the quality of life for the folks that come through the court that are charged with these low level quality of life type crimes. So criminal trespasses, disorderly conducts, violation of park rules where someone has stuff they shouldn't have in the park, and those kinds of things that may or may not belong in front of a judge, may not, in the criminal justice system, depending on your perspective. It really doesn't matter. Once they're cited with one of these things that's in a geographical qualifying area within the city, then it can become part of our community court program, which means the vast majority of the time, the person being cited is not going to jail. The officer is giving the person cite to appear in the court. They don't appear in the traditional courtroom. They now appear in our first floor, which is basically our specialty docket floor, which looks nothing like a courthouse or a courtroom. And that's very much on purpose. It's very intentional. They talk to an attorney right away. They talk about their case, talk about the legal options they may have after reviewing all the discovery that they have. And then they can take what we have as in terms of an assessment. This assessment is a validated tool where they're asking questions and determining their answers to the questions kind of determines what their community court plan would look like. Basically, what are their needs? Who are the service providers that we're working with? And how can we connect these folks together and give this single person the services that they deserve, right? And that they really need to attain whatever stability that they're going to be able to attain, sort of the next step up. And it ranges from mental health treatment, substance abuse disorder treatment, helping somebody get their birth certificate, identification card, social security, and housing, God forbid. And I won't go into the specifics of all the stuff, but that's generally the idea of the community court. We're kind of scraping all the stuff off this. We don't want people revolving in and out of the jail all the time with the same stuff, the same faces, when nothing's being done regarding the underlying issues with this particular person or this particular group of folks. Because it's always going to be the same, right? Someone gets picked up, put in jail, released, nothing changes on the outside, right? Same streets, same people, same weather usually. And so the idea of the community court is to say, well, what change can we make between the time that they are cited and the time that their criminal case is over? The beautiful part about it is that if they go through the community court program, the criminal charge or charges are dismissed. But the real marrow of the program is the fact that this person has engaged enough to where they continue to be connected with service providers after the criminal case is done. So whether it's adjudicated or dismissed or whatever the case may be, they're still in contact with these service providers on the get-go. So they're working with Emergence, they're working with Laurel Hill, they're working with Lane County Behavioral Health, they're working with St. Vincent de Paul, or whomever it is that they're working with. They've got those connections, their names are in the system. And it's not just this revolving door of charges. So there's a lot in there. We've got a lot of new programs that I hope Sarah touches on that are very amazing, especially given the community that we live in. And it's really a philosophy that's kind of imbued itself throughout what we do in the courthouse as a whole. So that's the general overview. And unless anyone has any questions, we can move forward. Rick?
What jurisdiction does the criminal court have over the violators during the period of time that they're being provided with the services?
That's a great question. So in order to participate in the program, it's a diversionary program, so that person is going to waive their right to a trial. And of course, they're talking with their attorney before they do this, going over all the legal options. When they enter that, plea, the case is basically stayed because it's a diversion. And as long as they continue to work with these service providers and come to the court, and it's once a week, the vast majority of the time they're coming to the court once a week, and the court basically making sure the structure for this program stays intact. And this person is continuing to work with providers and checking in with our program manager, community court program manager, and everything is squared. They're getting the support they need, but they're also being held accountable for participating in the program. So if the program is revoked for whatever reason, whether it's non-compliance or a series of other new charges that are not community court eligible or beyond payroll, some aspect where the diversion might be revoked, then the court would revoke the diversion, proceed to sentencing.
Are the charges, the type of charges that are available for people like this a limited number, or everything?
No, that's another great question. So these are all our non-person lower level misdemeanors. So class C misdemeanor plus or minus, maybe a couple of B's in there. And your assault and a menacing, those aren't going to be community court eligible charges. And then these charges like criminal mischief and in the third degree, lower level thefts, and like I said, disorderly conduct, criminal trespasses. Those are all eligible. The vast majority of those have to happen in certain geographic areas. So downtown here, parks and open space. If they happen in those geographical areas, they're community court eligible. If it happens outside those areas, they're not, except for the charge of criminal trespass in the second degree. And relatively recently, within the last few years, we've opened that piece. So anybody in town that is in town, unless you've committed criminal trespass in the second degree, they're community court eligible. Unless they've got another charge tagged on in the complaint, they're going to come through our program. And so we started off fairly small, very much on purpose, and then have grown as far as the resources are available and the need presents itself. And we have this collaborative approach with all of our system partners ready to move forward to expand and expand. So criminal trespass is the most recent example of the charge expansion, where it's open up to the entire city. So hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, it does. I just wonder how you get the funding for it.
Ooh, that's a great training.
So, so kind of where we're at now, we, as Judge Gill mentioned, it's been a project that's been going on for a couple of years, but this, we've been in the provider room for about a year now, almost a year. Yeah, January of a year. So we got really lucky, and with the community safety tax, we were able to go from the library, and we were able to take over the first floor of the courthouse. And I think we're one of maybe very few, if any, others that have a now a provider room. So when people come into community court and other specialty programs, which was something that was really important, is that we have this consistency and across all of our programs that they're getting the same offer, but they come in through the front door. There's a provider room. They walk right into the provider room. There's a beautiful mural that I think some of you guys are obviously aware of that our team with partners and law enforcement and attorneys and participants and providers created so that they walk in and that's where all the providers are for all of our programs, specifically community court. All of that was paid through the community safety justice or the community safety tax. And then there's a courtroom that was set up for programs. So Judge Gill, for example, sits at a table like this across from the participant. It's set up for that area. Community court originally started off as a grant that went into bridge funding. And then when the community safety tax went into effect, it started funding community courts. Recently, the really exciting part is that we went out for a grant with BJA again, and we were able to get a $600,000 with a $200,000 match grant to do a community court extension. And so as part of that proposal in 2021, we proposed that we get funding to help with shelter for our participants and to secure a provider that could add additional or give us additional support and resources to our high risk participants. Because based on had National Center for Justice, who used to be National Center for Court Innovation, come in and do an evaluation, who helped set up community court that we work in coordination with. They identified through the review that we needed a high risk program or more resources. And so based on that and some of our other programs, we thought it would be in coordination with the city prosecutor's office. Me and Travis basically went and applied for the grant. We were able to secure $600,000, which has gotten us a hut community through community supportive shelters. That's just specifically to community court. There is going to be between 14 and 17 huts. We just actually got a few in, and I think we're up to like 4 to 6 now, which is amazing because as we know, if people have shelter, that they are much more successful in the program. We know that if they have housing and shelter. We also are coordinating with Laurel Hill. There's a lack of resources in the community, and so being able to give them funding to have case management on their end, to coordinate with our case manager / program coordinator, Brenda Kosadar, they are now working in coordination with participants who are in their program. So they also can have wraparound services where a participant in high risk may be able to go to one provider and have 5 things that are on their case plan. Because as Judge Gill mentioned, when somebody comes in, they do an assessment, it's called an MCAT. It based needs, and it's also based on their criminal history. So they have a needs and a risk score. That case plan determines what providers and what needs they have. So being able to work with one provider versus 5 providers and then also get shelter, we're hoping, and I think we'll see that will help that level of participants that are in the program over and over again, or have a higher level of risk in the community. We're hoping that this will secure them and help them get out, and that it will reduce recidivism in the high risk group. And so this grant that we went out for is $600,000 with a $200,000 match. It's over 4 years. And so we're really excited. Laurel Hill has been a success for us in the past. They've worked with our mental health court program, and we have almost 100% graduation rate. And so just the coordination that we've had with them over time, and they have a lot of services in one program. And then they also coordinate with other treatment providers that are local, but somebody can go in and do employment, housing, because they're also working on housing while they're in the shelter program. They can work on employment, shelter, housing, mental health, coordinate with substance treatment, and they do a bunch of classes, and that person is secure versus having to meet and go throughout the community. One of the key pieces with community court that I really like to talk about is the coordination and collaboration that happens. I think that's the most important thing. So we have a team that we call the core team, or people that work that really make community court happen. And you have law enforcement. So Allison Jordan is part of our team. She's at community court. She's working with these people out on the streets. She's very important to that program. Law enforcement EPD has always been very important. The downtown team in coordination with what's happening with the participants and those relationships that are building. They bring in information to us that helps support and give us a connection to resources and providers. You have the city prosecutor's office. We have specific attorneys from our law firm that we coordinate with, EWW, that work with this team. And then we have judges and we have a case manager. The case manager is very important. They are working with all of the participants in the program. They're coordinating with the providers. They're making sure providers are there and that they are still the providers we should be working with. Because all the other providers, except for Laurel Hill and CSS, are all there on a volunteer basis. And they're not just serving the participants, they're serving the whole community, because that room is open to everybody in the community on court day. And then we have other providers that we're working with too. Fuse has been a really big partner. We're working with FIT. FIT has been a really big coordination that we're doing now. We're reviewing everybody for the FIT program to see if they are FIT eligible, so we can coordinate them with the new position that is coming down.
Right,
So, yeah.
It is now.
FIT is a team through Lane County Behavioral Health, and they are working with people that are, that have a high level need. They do have to opt in, they have to volunteer, or not volunteer, they have to agree to work with the FIT team. But they're a level of peer services and they're coordinating with them to get into mental health at Lane County Behavioral Health. And there's a little bit more, they have different teams, but this team is also in coordination with the position that's potentially going in with EPD, where there will be a QMHP working with law enforcement downtown. They are in coordination with each other. And so that coordination with the court is really important because we then know what's going on with them. They're getting services, they're already connected with Lane County Behavioral Health, and these people are out on the street working with them versus just waiting for them to come into the office. And so it's been a huge coordination, just like Fuse has been. And they come, we have providers who come into our staffing and they help with the core team really determine what's going to happen with these participants. So there's just a lot of coordination that's constantly going on with every person, every week, staffing each person before and after they're in the program. So I always think that's really important. The other two big pieces that I like to talk about with community core is when you opt into the program, you have to have 8 hours of community. It used to be called community restoration. We changed that because that's actually a term with fitness, 370. And so people return on community restoration. We changed the name. It's now, community enrichment. So that is a great program where they have to do 8 hours. It's not just giving back to the community with community service, which it is partly, but they also do things like classes. They learn basic needs. They've done the art window projects. They do a lot with the community with classes, training. So it's kind of giving back and also helping them better themselves or feel like they're part of the community. So everybody does 8 hours. We also use that if people need, which we hate using the sanctions. A lot of times we've had people ask if they can continue doing community restoration after they're with court. So we also look at opportunities on how they can reduce their fees. So they feel like they're making some progress, but also working in. And then the last piece that helps associate or work that program work is that we have volunteers. So in order to make community Court run, we have to have volunteers. So we have local community members through the law school, local community members who are just want to volunteer. We've had retired doctors, we've had teachers, we've had students, and they come in and they volunteer and they help take people out to community restoration. They help with the day of court. We really try to work with our law students on part of the court program. There's like a whiteboard that has to be maintained, people coming into the program. And so the volunteers are huge. We're always looking for more volunteers, but the program really wouldn't work without providers volunteering to be there and local community members volunteering to help the program run. And so it's really, the big thing I love about community court is like, it's one big, it's the whole community coming together to help the community get out of the system. So, I think that's the big gist of it. I mean, there's a lot more. We could talk hours about community court. We're really excited because we've been a big part of community, the Center for Justice, which was who helped us get this program. And now we are kind of leading things with them. And so they are actually a community court convening here next month, where other courts from around the US are coming here to hear from us and learn about Eugene and Lane County and what our program's doing here. So it's really exciting. But yeah, just any of our partners, EPD is a huge relationship to make this program work, and then all of our local providers and other partners. So any questions?
If somebody who graduates gets in trouble again,
Mhm.
can they do it again?
Mhm.
Is there a limit to that, or
Mhm.
as long as it's in these certain?
Yeah, and we do see, I mean, Judge Gill can speak to this, but we see a lot of people who come back through the program, and it's kind of like other. It's like other things where a lot of times it can take up to 7 times, right? Like the average 7 times to really, it's that time that clicks, right? You just never know what it is. I mean, sometimes it's first time, sometimes it's the 12th time. Sometimes progress looks different too. Like, yes, of course, we always want participants to graduate, right? But part of the progress that sometimes people don't see is, yeah, John didn't graduate, he didn't make it through the program, but John got housed this time. John didn't make it through the program, but he started employment. John didn't, now he's working with a peer. So it may even just be one step. That's why I always hate to talk about graduation, because it's like, yeah, we graduated. However, what's the progress that we made with that person? So, yeah.
I love graduation.
I love graduation too. It's fun. They get award, all kinds of things. Everybody gets excited, and of course it's great, but I also like seeing like, what's the progress they made this time? So.
Excuse me, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
And sharing your time with us. I don't like talking about justice in these terms, but I know that this is the kind of appeal that's persuasive to community members.
Mhm.
In terms of return of investment, have you calculated, is there a number of folks based upon your reduced rates of recidivism?
Mhm.
Is there a return on investment in terms of keeping folks out of
Yeah,
incarceration?
I would say yes, and then we have data that speaks to that, if that's something that you need to share. I don't have it on me. I mean, there's some data in the slides. But there's also when the Center for Justice came out and they did an evaluation at one point, they determined how much the average person costs the city.
Mhm.
And actually, I think that's still on our website. If I remember correctly, you can go and review it.
It's the review from the National Center for State Courts.
Yeah.
And
Oh, sorry.
They come out with
State
an
Courts.
analysis. Part of that analysis, addressing exactly what the question is.
Mhm.
With that, make sure you remember the caveat. That's for the first 2 years, 16,
Yeah.
Yeah.
September of 2016 through 18. That was an evaluation that was required. So when you read through that, that's for those years. Pandemic blew a lot of stuff up. And so getting back on our feet is where we are now. The dollar for dollar is probably going to be fair to really dial in. But you should come down and hang out for a while and see what happens.
And then there's another report. There's what he's talking about, and then there's an additional report from Center for State, which is Center for Justice. And they came and also did a bunch of data and evaluation stuff that was a continue, which is how we got to the BJ grant. I think, yes, back to what you said, come down, you'll see the return for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Because part of the other thing too, I always like to talk about real quick is if we weren't serving them in that area, they would be in our other dockets, and the resources that it takes for one person in another docket, specifically in this program and other mental health programs that we have for there's other pieces of that too that affect our system in other ways that sometimes isn't captured as well.
I just want to recognize the city, Judge Gill and the leadership of the court, when he talked about that he appeared in front of me. We were at the jail and the city was in a revolving door of arresting the same people over and over again, thousands of times. I mean, I literally signed over, thousands of warrants for the crimes that you're now addressing in this court. And then if it's leadership, congratulations, whatever it is, the city got its act together and shifted from a terrible cat and mouse struggle on the street to a sensible way of addressing this stuff. And so, to whatever behind the scenes and to Judge Gill and the court for pursuing this, because it's just such I can't stress it. The dollars saved and the lives improvement. No, there was such waste. It was incredible waste of money. Engaged in a hapless pursuit of nothing. So. But I'm going to attribute it to leadership. I haven't followed. Clearly, the court got a sense of what it could do and is pursuing that. In the city, once again, our city has, this, the CRB, it has police commission, and it has a court that's trying sensibly to address this. Thank you.
Built into that, just to follow on because it's space is available. Those costs that you would read about, just everybody's thinking about is the cost of the officer's time, the dual officer's time for the arrest, is the cost for the jail bed and the jail space and all the work that goes into that. It goes into the booking process and the release process. It has to do with the judge time that's there. It has to do with the hiring of the indigent defense that's appointed to represent that particular person, the prosecution time. And then the follow-on cost to make sure that this person actually appears for that docket. And when it's this revolving door that Alan was just talking about, the likelihood of appearance goes way down. And so the cost, hard to quantify, but it's been attempted and it's out there. But I also replug, if you get a chance, Wednesdays, 1:30 is the best time. Come down to community court because that's when it starts to hum. Those folks that are excited to appear, the folks who are participants are still lingering around. And then our providers are in that room. You walk into that provider room and you're going to say, I think I'm in the wrong spot because this is the courthouse. Different being you're downstairs as opposed to upstairs in the traditional courtroom.
I wanted to add real quick, one thing before I ask question, and he said thank you, is just, we do have a team at the court, which is really great. We have a specialty team and they work with all those programs and that is their focus. So they work with all the programs, that's their 2 program coordinator case managers, mental health support side community court, and then a team of specialty court clerks and leadership who only work in this group. And so I just want to tell you that back to his point, we would not be able to make it happen wasn't for that core group because that's their focus. And they run around and they do a million things and they're always trying to do what's best for the community. So I just want to put that before we're done.
Bernadette, do you have a question?
I do have a question, 2 actually. I didn't hear what kinds of charges can go through this community court?
Mostly, let's just call it misdemeanor, like C misdemeanors and some B misdemeanors, non-person lower level offenses.
Okay, so non-person sorts of things.
Correct.
So thefts, trespasses, those sorts of things.
Mhm. Yeah, and I can send those over. Also, in addition to that, if you go to our website and we click on community court, it'll tell you the eligible offenses if you wanted to look it up too, if you wanted this very specifics.
And then my other question has to do with, to kind of tie it into the CRB. If I know people will sometimes appear in court and start complaining about the officer and what happened there. How does the city court handle complaints made against the officer? I mean, what direction, if any, do you give them?
Well, that's a great question, and that manifests itself in a couple of different ways. And that happens not only in community court, but in the municipal court in general. And that's been around forever. That's always been a thing. And so if it's a person who's not yet represented by an attorney and they're talking about a criminal matter or even a non-criminal matter, the court usually refers to the police auditor's office if there's a complaint that needs to be followed up. So the court stays out of any of those procedures. And if it's coming up during a court process, someone has an attorney and the person is generally complaining, the court will usually warn the person that, hey, you have the right to remain silent. This is the setting that you need to make sure you do that. The attorney will usually jump in and say, this is not the time or the place for this particular instance. It doesn't happen too terribly often in the court, but those would be the 2 general times when it usually does. And it's redirected in a real appropriate way really fast.
And if the court has any concerns about an officer's behavior in court, do you direct it to the supervisor or would the court follow up with the auditor's office?
I just want to clarify the question. Are you asking about actual behavior in court or is the behavior that's being described in court?
I mean, either one. If you hear something that, that either the officer's behavior on the stand in court or in the testimony, there's something that raises a concern for you that they may have violated policy in some way or just not been appropriate, how would you follow up with that?
I think that's a pretty loaded question. And I think it's really fact specific. I think I'd love to follow up on that just because it is really it depends on if you're in trial depends on the actual behavior, depends on what the testimony is, depends on in what phase of the trial it's at. It depends on whether it's relevant or not. It depends on a lot of key factors. If it's actual behavior in the court, you know, I've never seen it, nor would I think I would ever see something like that.
But we're never gonna forget that Magana, I mean, we're not, you're gonna be aware that that episode happened in Eugene Muni Court and that it should never happen again in any court, if that, not to, you know, that's just something that we should acknowledge, I think.
It's not, and I appreciate that. Since I've been there, it's never been an issue that was, elevated to any particular, level of concern.
Sorry, I didn't mean to give you a loaded question. I just was wondering whether, I guess, if it's ever come up that the court or court staff has ever felt the need to contact a supervisor or the auditor's office at any point. So,
Not to say that it hasn't, but none that I know of, Bernadette.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
I would, I don't know, I just, Muni Court's very, very good about checking in with us. They have our information over there, folks,
Yes.
and come to us, and that's often how folks find out about us. And they're also very good about whenever they're running low on brochures to get. Very, but no, so I think, I think it's a little, I don't know what I'm going, where I'm going with that. I haven't slept enough lately, but anyway. I think the communication and the partnership and like knowing about each other is happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Asking for it and the lack of conversation that actually happens. So that's pretty. And quickly go back, I'm gonna get this wrong, but I think it's forensic intensive treatment. Oh, it's not the fit. Oh, yes, sorry. And it's a group of folks with LCBH that supposed to be like a registered nurse, a couple of QMHP, folks who understand trauma and best practices in addressing things on the street. And it's a team that goes out and meets somebody, got a cap of 30 people that they can treat or help at any time. And it's really supposed to meet them where they are, sort of not the cahoots model really, but just sort of a continued contact piece that just popped back into my head. So it's a continued contact piece to say kind of peer support, kind of treatment, kind of, hey, what kind of structure do you need to make sure that we can get you out of what you're doing? And they have to have contact with law enforcement. I think it's 3 contacts in a year, and have other specific needs unhoused behavioral health needs. So it was really a coming together of law enforcement and behavioral health they created this system. I don't know if you've heard people talk about the crisis system, the crisis center that they want to bring in. The FIT is part of that system. It's just sort of on the street part. There's the crisis center, which is part of that. And then there's other diversionary parts in there as well. But that's where the FIT team fits in. It just all came together.
Judge Gill,
Sort of.
thank you so much. And I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Sarah.
Sarah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
If we have additional questions, feel free to reach out to you by email.
Always.
Oh, yeah, I'm busy. Wednesdays at 1:30. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Yeah. And if you have any follow-up questions, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Good to see you again. See you again. Yes.
Just.
You can save the world, aren't you?
But yeah. Fingers crossed.
It's working.
Bernadette, can you see that?
Yes, I can.
Okay. You know.
Can you see the second slide, Bernadette, when I click to history?
I see history.
Okay, perfect.
Well, my name is Ron Tinseth. I'm a lieutenant with the Eugene Police, and I am currently, for the last 6 years, working in finance and administration, so I think everything that makes a police officer be able to do their job is things that we support, so hiring, technology, fleet facilities, a long list of things, contracts, all kinds of different things, small scale construction projects, you name it, there's a very wide responsibility and three work groups that help us with doing that work. I've been here, well, I've been asked to come and show our body worn camera, which is this little contraption. And just around Rick, you can look at it and
Is it on?
if it beeps, it'll be.
Telling.
Then by policy, you'll be required to say what? Or audio and video. Anyway, just kind of a history of where we've been, how this kind of came to happen with Eugene Police, where we're at now, and where I see this going in the future. So just high level stuff. We've actually had some level of recordings in our police cars since the 90s, when that was a little more than a VHS tape. When my youngest was 5, he asked me what a VHS was, and he's now 21, but anyway. That system was in just a few cars. It never really took off. And then in the early 2000s, 2004, 2005, we ended up with a system called Coban, and that was a system where you had a hard drive and you would plug it into and out of the camera, and you put your case numbers in and a bunch of other data and whatnot. And we had that for a long time, and then you had a remote mic, so it's not exactly body worn, but this didn't exist back then. So it was that was the next progression. So it's been kind of in culture for a long time. Then in 2017, we ended up getting a grant from DOJ, a 50-50 grant, both around $250,000. I think the grant total was $474 in total, after each party put in their thing. And we got body worn cameras for all of our uniformed police officers. So patrol division, not detectives, not anybody else. Thank you. And that was a 5-year contract that came up in 23, and we renewed and were able to get over that 5-year period. Also, we had some expansion in the police department with the community safety payroll tax, adding some positions, adding street crimes, a number of other things. And we were able to, within our existing budget, buy some additional cameras at various points, to the point where we were able to give all of our detectives body worn cameras in 22-ish. And so all of our sworn officers had cameras. And in 23, we synced up our in-car video system, which is a fleet system, and our body worn cameras, which is individual officer system. If you're a police officer, a uniformed officer, you have both. If you're a detective, you just have the one. And so they're now, we're in a year and a half into this 5-year contract. It was about $2.67 million. And that's kind of where we're at now. We also added 30 for SWAT. So if you're a SWAT police officer, you have equipment at a different facility than the office you work at. So it made sense for us to get 30 additional cameras for SWAT, and they use these now on SWAT activities.
When did that happen?
We bought them a year and a half ago. The policy was handled by my peer, who's the SWAT commander, and I couldn't tell you if they use them, but they're in their office. So
So they have They have two cameras,
They
the
have two
officers, they have one with.
Yeah, and we get a good deal because they discount the other camera by,
They don't have to worry about it.
it's assigned to you. You saw on the top that it says my name. So it did. Anyway, when it's in the dock, it says your name on it, so you don't grab somebody else's by mistake. At the end of your shift, you put it in a dock, there's, 100 and some open spots, you just plop it in there and it uploads automatically.
Another SWAT question. The SWAT have in-car video too,
For some,
or some
And
in the
sorry,
army?
in which. Sorry, that was the wrong way to say that question. My understanding is it's not in the armored vehicles, but are you like when they're in their patrol vehicles or sorry? I want just clarification. And I could be wrong.
in some, they used to have it in the Bearcat plan,
Yeah,
and I don't remember what we did with it. And the new one, the new armored rig, I don't remember what we did there either. Sorry. But you can imagine 230 cars, 220 cops, and it'd be 5% of my job. It just kind of is. Yeah.
So. What, everything. It's.
Yeah.
I know. But-
Well, yeah, what I would
Fair
say, to that is my team has provided the technology for that work group. And they have the tools. To do to use it.
Thank you. Good job.
How we're set up, these things are really cool and they're smart. And when you're wearing it and you activate your light bar, it goes on. And it talks to the computer and it puts all of your metadata in, so you don't have to put your own metadata in. So your case number, your incident number, your time, all the rest of the stuff, it talks to all the systems. So you don't even have to do anything with this. You're supposed to go in on the back end, you can go in and view it later if you want. If you pull out a taser and activate the taser, it goes on. If you show up to certain calls and there are other emergency equipment in operation, it will automatically activate. So they're very smart. They're getting smarter all the time. We also have the ability in our new Axon contract to remote view this. So if live. So if, say I'm a watch commander and one of my officers isn't responding to a radio app or has pushed an emergency button and isn't responding to the radio, I can remote view into this and see what this is.
Even if they're not activated?
Yes, yeah. It activates and there's a way that it tells the officer, but if there's an emergency or something or somebody's hurt, we can do that. We're just getting into that stuff, but there's a long list of really fun things that this does that is very, and that's of course is a safety issue. I already talked about the integration for metadata. We use these in general, we're guided by PALM 1203. That was updated in July of this year. And we use them essentially at a high level for any time we're having an investigative contact or criminal encounter or we're arresting somebody. We can also use it, many officers, if say somebody breaks down on the highway and give them a ride somewhere, they'll activate it. This is just a way to document, what happened in the police car. The last thing we want is for someone to allege something that didn't happen. This is the independent witness. So that is, the officer can record this at any point. And that's generally at a high level how we direct our staff. In the future, we have three and a half more years on this contract with Axon. I'm sure in 3.5 more years, we'll probably start negotiations with them in 3 years. And again, assess our needs. We are funded some of this. We compete with equipment replacement fund, which is citywide. And there's no guarantee we're gonna get that funding, and that's half the funding. So that $2.6 million we got, I had to get very creative on how we get this. One thing that I would encourage support from this group is encouraging a capital replacement fund for our agency. Public Works has capital plans, facilities has capital plans. We do not. And we know in 3.5 years, we're gonna need $3 million to do this, and we should be saving. So to the extent you can help support us on that. We also don't have plans for body worn or for ballistic vests. There's a lot of things that we should be capital planning for, and the way our city finance stuff works is it doesn't happen. Like when the fire department needed their SCBA's, it was a big deal that had to go to city council, and they should have been planning for it, but they, like us, are in a situation where we're general fund. At the end of the fiscal year, we're not allowed to do any capital planning. So I think that's something that, in my position, would be super beneficial, and I know the chief would like to have some capital planning, but there's a limited amount of money. Questions?
Why a 30-second delay on the sound when the video comes on?
Because it buffers. And it will capture the audio, or will capture the video. And then when you hit it, the audio goes live. So it's not necessarily. I don't know 100%, but it doesn't capture the audio. It may be some technology issue. I don't know.
It's more like we get to see 30 seconds before you hit record.
Exactly.
Rather
It's a
than-
pre-event buffer. Or police cars do the same thing. They actually buffer 40 hours.
A question we often get from the community is, if officers can watch it, can they edit it?
No.
I know that, but.
Yeah. On the back end of this, I think that when I was in professional standards, this was fairly new, and I could pull up a multi-view, kind of like you're watching a sports game, and watch, 4 different sports games. Well, this would be 4 different officers all in the same scene, and it geolocates. Well, that was something else this thing does, is it can geolocate. But it will show you, it will sync in real time, and so you see what each of the officers is seeing. I'm sure you've seen those in your.
No, but it would be great if.
No, we have to go one.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Yeah, no, I that back in 17 when I was the lieutenant for.
Potentially, I don't.
Okay.
We're always in the car for the drive there, and then. We get to the place.
There's also transcription. That it's not 100% accurate, but it's helpful.
How's that?
Muting, you push that button, it's once. Anyway, you push it and hold it for 3 seconds and it stops it, but you push it for a less amount of time, and that I think needs it. Do that, or it's this button. Like I said, I went to professional standards before these were issued. So I just had my first one issued 2 weeks ago, and when I was covering for a watch commander. And so there was a little learning curve on my end, and it took about 5 minutes. It's super simple. Yeah. Muting.
Yeah, occasionally.
Yeah, and policy says that it's to discuss tactics or some other thing, that, oftentimes, I'll just give you my example, when I was working, covering for my partner on the road here a couple weeks ago. We ended up going to what was likely to be a fatality. The person was gone, the offending driver was gone, and, I said, hey, guys, at what point did you turn yours off? And they're like, oh, about 10 minutes ago. I'm like, okay, I can turn mine off now because there's nothing else. You know, it's a logical conclusion to the call. Yeah. There's oftentimes lulls in calls where, something will happen. You're maybe waiting for a search warrant for 2 or 3 hours. There's really no reason to report. So it's a lot of times up to the discretion of the officer. I can understand sometimes they forget to turn them back on. Maybe they don't, I don't know.
I think where the contention comes in is that it seems like at a critical point after the incident's taken place, the officer kind of are sharing their ideas about what happened, someone pushed the button.
Yeah.
And it's probably irrelevant, it probably shouldn't be held against them, but they're probably talking like they would talk to their buddies at that time. That's the impression that I get.
Yeah, and there's, and again, I go back to a couple weeks ago when I was doing this, I forgot to turn it off, and so I got like an hour of me driving around. Yeah,
We've seen it.
yeah, sure, yeah, yeah.
So you mentioned the policy update last summer. Was that to reflect the new technology, or what was that? What was that?
I can't remember, I think that Julie Smith, our policy sergeant, retired sergeant, had asked me to take a look at it. I vetted it through my teams for change of business practice, and then we just updated it that way. You know, it referenced like metadata and a bunch of other stuff that wasn't currently the same business practice that we have.
I think we've got time for one more question. It's.
Keep keeping us on track.
I'm curious about the remote viewing and whether that will lead to a policy change. I'm just sort of thinking about, like, I can see where in safety situations, you have a call that's likely to be really dangerous and you're not hearing back from someone. There's a way to sort of clue into what's going on. And I'm just curious if the union has pushed back on that, or if you have any conversations amongst people who feel like there are some times when that could be abused, or, you know, just like, what is the conversation?
Yeah. So the union has already bought off on everything regarding this. So there's no further discussion. If we were to remote into this, it puts a notification to the officer to know that someone is remoted in. One of the other ways that we could utilize this is put this on a canine and remote into it, or a bomb robot or something like that. Our Axon rep said that some other police departments had the dispatchers logged onto this system, and one of them had remoted into an officer's stop. And when the officer had turned, a suspect threw a gun in the bush. And the dispatcher was able to say, hey, you just threw a gun in the bush. And the officer was able to take care of that. We're not there yet. This is a new technology for us with that system. We're also in that same Officer 7 OSP 7 plus package, so officer safety plan with Axon. There, we get free storage, unlimited storage with Axon, and that is probably one of the biggest things for us, because we were in a system where you had to pay for a certain amount of storage, And our retention levels are set by us. And so the more we retain, the bigger our storage is, the more cost. So when we switched over from our old system to our unlimited, we had a liability to Taser of almost $2 million or $200,000 of excess storage. We'd gone over our storage by so many terabytes that we were about to have to write a check. And I'm sure they would have been glad to send us that bill if we didn't sign up for a new system, but the unlimited storage is amazing. There's also some things talking about the Taser system, a little off topic for body worn cameras, but now our cops can send a witness who has maybe cell phone footage or footage from a security system, a link that they can attach their video and send it to our evidence. And the officer gets a notification, can view it, but it goes right into evidence. And that's one of the other things. There's a long list of little whiz bang things that Taser's given us access to for this next plan, but it's good that we're all synced up.
That's within you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a huge thing for the giant cost savings. Also, if we break them, we just think it's. Yeah, so if I drop it in the water, drop it in the river, break it off of a motor or whatever, let's get a new one. Pretty cool. Okay.
Lieutenant Tinseth, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, there's a few new places.
It's break time. I'm gonna pause the recording.
All right,
We're back. We're live.
we are live. Okay, we are at case review. So our first round of discussion is going to be general comments.
I think Rob's
Are we
gonna
gonna-
give you a little.
I'm sorry.
Quick rundown.
I'm so sorry.
You're so.
You have-
focused.
Yes, Rob has provided a wonderful case summary as always, and I don't know why I forgot.
So it's a little shorter right now, so. So we've got a allegation of failed body worn video deployment. So the summary of facts, so on June 20, 2023. Reporting party complained, Eugene Police Department officers improperly handled a service call. RP alleged that on June 18th, 2023, officers did not meet established agency standards and failed to protect the community. After intake, the RP's complaint was classified and processed as a service complaint. During the intake review of the RP's complaint by members of the auditor's office, it was revealed that the responding officers did not deploy their body worn video recording instruments. The second IA investigation regarding the body worn video deployment was initiated and allegations were drafted. So Officer A and Officer B accepted the expedited IA process and stipulated to the allegations that were drafted by this office. So, and here are the allegations, so they're the same for Officer A and B, I'll only read it once. So it's a 1203.7.1.c, body worn video that on June 18th, Officer A failed to use his or her body worn video system while he or she conducted an investigative encounter in June. And then B is the same. And then so it was a auditor generated complaint. It's a body worn video classification. It's covered into 1203, and then the adjudication recommendations aren't applicable because they stipulated. So there are the materials that were provided, and wait for it, here comes your straight photo. Look at that. Took that about 10 minutes before you guys came in here. I should have been trying looking on the owl.
It's straight on the top, but not on the right side.
Steve job of getting it.
Just
All right.
kidding.
All right, so it's good for you guys to take it away and do your thing.
All right, we'll open up the general comments with Alan and go clockwise, if that's okay with you all.
Sure, that's okay with me. On the intake classification, I don't have, I understand a citizen generated complaint that then morphed into a service complaint, correct?
Yeah, so the citizen complaint was a service level. complaint.
Right, and then auditor, once it was determined that the body worn issues, so system functions appropriately in this case, and just note that with the positive spin, and turn it over to Clay.
Yeah, likewise, I just, it's good to see the, thorough tracking from one thing that's a problem from a community standpoint, but then sort of seeing an organizational issue from an insider's perspective, and that gets caught and followed up on, and so it was same comments as that one, yeah.
I agree.
Bernadette?
I've got nothing.
Was it through the portal? It looked like it was
Yes,
through the portal?
It was through the portal
Yeah.
and they successfully, the community member was able to successfully upload evidence
The photos
through
and
the,
stuff.
through the portal, which was really seamless. and
Yeah.
Exciting.
I really liked how that looked. Like it was the portal report looked good, and it looked like, I mean, from what I could tell, that it was an easy way for the public to access us in a new way, or access you in a new way. I thought that was really cool. Oh, and then a question, sorry. I also always love it when supervisors are looking at something for something else and they find something else that's wrong and they raise it. I like it that they're not sweeping things under the rug or turning a blind eye. How many metaphors can I use?
Keep going.
That's it for right now. Was the continued communication with the reporting party? I know that that's something that you were excited about with the portal. Was that working, or was that a?
That's been still in development a bit as far as how we can do any kind of individualized communication with folks. Lindsay can speak more to that, but
Can you repeat the question?
Well, just about how,
It's
I
okay.
know when you set up the portal.
Yeah.
One of the exciting things was that like the reporting party can go back and check the status and kind of like. check on
Yeah,
that kind of
so
stuff.
I don't know about their, I don't know about like the log that checks when they check back in, but I do know that they get push notifications for us as it moves through our
Oh, cool.
process. So it used to kind of be stuff would come in and there'd be this big period of time when things were happening, but we don't like notify people. And then when the case ends, then they get another point of contact notification without a lot in the middle. Now it comes in, they're notified that it's been received. They're notified when we classify it and what the classification is. They're notified when it's assigned to a supervisor. They're notified when it's been closed, and then they receive a closing letter. So they're getting multiple points of communication throughout the process, which is much better. So I don't know how often they're checking in,
Sure.
but I do know that they're getting a lot more frequent updates as it moves through our pipeline.
Do they get notified if we talk about the case?
Yes, so in this case, any case that comes here that has been community generated, we send them a letter saying the CRB has chosen to review your case. If you're interested, you can tune in or you can come in person, and here's how.
Cool.
Yep.
Thanks.
Great. And these pictures were community generated
Correct.
images, right? Yeah, cool. My comment was just, great work on you all bringing us up to date in the 21st century, and I know you've done a lot of work to get this off the ground. Clay, policies, practices, and policy training considerations.
I guess, I mean, it seems to me that we have this amazing technology that we spent millions of dollars on, and the training should be clear that it should be used, and I think that seems like that maybe the message of that got across, and so I just don't know where that's not. I have to say, like, even with the presentation of the technology previously, it sort of seemed like the lieutenant had some, I mean, he's not working in that capacity very often, but it seemed like there was some lapse of knowing exactly, you know, how and when it might function in a certain way and when mute is appropriate or not. And I think that that's something that should be, because of community interest and the issue, should be very clear to all people who might be using a body worn device. That's my comment on that, I think.
Yeah, I think it points out the fact that the purpose of cameras is to make it so that we know what happened, and we really don't know what happened, except that one side says one thing, one side says the other, and it's, we have to take whatever the conclusion is based on that. It's more of a subjective view. And I think it's important that we have to turn them on.
Bernadette?
Yeah, I agree with what Rick is saying. It reminds me when I first came on the CRB, the first round back in whatever that would have been, like 2009-ish. And the IA sergeant was Jerry Weber. And he would tell the officers, you know, when you're out there, you know, talk to everybody that's around. And I think now he would probably say, make sure your camera's on, because as we see in this case, it's like not having your camera on gets you in trouble, and having a camera on keeps you, you know, it's able to show what happened on a particular, you know, date and time. It's always not perfect. I mean, with the delays in the sound and, you know, sometimes the muting, but I think I appreciate that they brought this forward. I really appreciate that they both, you know, acknowledged what they did. I did have a question about the wording of their kind of their stipulation. I found it kind of interesting, just the difference between the two. I'm not sure that it really matters, but I found it kind of, one seemed more kind of legalistic, and one seemed to kind of own it a little bit more. So that's all.
Yeah, lawyers.
I didn't notice that. No, I agree, like, I don't know how many more times we can say that they should be on. In my time in the CRB, I feel like in the beginning, it was very rare. We would have in-car video, but we wouldn't always have body worn video. And it was so exciting when there was body worn, and it really did shed a lot more light on the situation. And I've talked to officers, whenever I see them in public, I'm like, I really like that you have a body worn camera. And they're like, we do too. Like it protects them as much as it protects the public. And I think that there is awareness of that, at least from some of the people, from some of the officers. And I hope that kind of becomes more clear. And I do have some concern about the, like, being able to patch in and watch if that will lower, like, I don't know. I'm concerned about that. The big brother situation of if it can be viewed, and I don't know. I mean, I think time will tell how that plays out, but I'm very excited about that. I think it's cool. But also, will it decrease the amount that they're turning it on? And then I guess kind of to circle back, maybe I should have asked this when the lieutenant was here, but I felt like I asked a lot about SWAT. Is it a policy that officers need to turn on their body worn camera, or is that still just like the best practice?
That's the policy.
That's the policy.
Yeah, so it's
So-
policy 1203.
Okay, so is that also the policy for SWAT? Like, should SWAT follow that policy?
So I mean, so I need to look at it with that lens. I will say the information that SWAT has had access to cameras for the last year and a half is new information to me as of tonight. So I've not read the policy with that
Right.
kind of critical eye. In general, officers must use the body worn system to record any of the following situations for their entire duration. Situations which officers have reasonable suspicion or probable cause that a person they are about to conduct has committed or is about to commit a crime or violation.
I'm assuming that every time SWAT is called, that is reasonable, right?
I
Okay,
think that's a reasonable assumption.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I mean.
okay. That, yeah, that was interesting. That
Yeah.
was an interesting little news update.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm done.
Thank you, Karen. Did I hear correctly that Lieutenant Tinseth say that they now have unlimited storage?
Yeah, that was new too.
That's exciting.
Yeah,
That's very
that's very
21st century
exciting.
also.
Yeah.
If they have unlimited storage, then storage is not a barrier to keeping them on all the time?
Storage wouldn't be. I think there are privacy considerations sometimes. For instance, a very long time ago, someone had their in-car video activated and went into the station to use the bathroom and did not turn off their mic. And I didn't need that, right? So that's the very basic level of privacy. Like, obviously, if you're not on a call, I don't need to be.
As someone reviewing the video.
Right, yeah.
Mhm.
And then there's issues with sometimes if you're in someone's home and they're the victim of a crime,
Sure.
an audio recording is more appropriate or just writing it down.
So it's never edited before the police auditor's office
Correct,
receives it.
correct.
Okay.
My understanding is that would be impossible.
And you don't want them to keep it on all the time.
I think there are reasonable times where it should be turned off, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, that was my question and possible suggestion is that, I don't know, in a few years when artificial intelligence technology is cheaper and more widely available, we could probably write an algorithm that does the screening, but that's probably a waste.
Terrifying, I think.
Do you know of any agencies that leave it on?
No, I don't. No, but I think it's always interesting to me when we do sort of more of the technology, topics to see how things have changed, and then I start to feel old, but also.
Yeah, I mean, I don't wanna, waste people's time with speculation, but I think that's an important conversation to keep alive. Thanks. All right,
Wait,
I'm sorry, Alan.
It's okay,
And
I just wanna make sure you were done. Just following up on that, if a light bar can activate it, if the presence of other cameras can activate it, certainly a dispatch. Like you're live on a call, that could activate it. I mean, and that would address the issue of, it being always on a call and not when you're eating lunch or talking to your wife on the phone or whatever. So, but you're dispatched and your camera goes on, seems like a reasonable thing. My take in trial work, damn lawyers, stipulations are interesting because sometimes you try to stipulate out of an uncomfortable situation. You'd rather just say, I did this. I don't want the scrutiny. So I don't want a jury to hear how badly I behave. I'm willing to just admit it. And it kind of pulls, it's not always allowed. It's at the discretion of a judge because it can pull the rug out of examining what happened. And I read this case through that lens, actually. I read two officers saying, oh, this was some scene with, sick people, beat up people, fancy cars, it's like, it could have turned into quite an involved, long encounter. And so, as Rick, I believe, said, it became just they said, because there's no evidence. We were deprived of the evidence of the camera. And so, it's just significant. I think that, the investigation seemed to simply be collecting witness statement and collecting the two officers' statement and saying, well, there's no reason to conclude that the officers aren't being truthful and so nothing here. So I know we don't discuss consequences here, other than the adjudication, but I think like you shouldn't escape just taking, it's good, yes, I'm happy that people take responsibility and avoid the unnecessary effort required to prove that you did something that is so obvious that you did, that you've saved us time and money by doing that. So I'm grateful for that, but I do believe it should be viewed partially through a lens is not to evade responsibility, but just to be like, hey, I did it. What do you want to talk? Tell me what you're going to do to me because I did it, rather than, what happened? Why did you not do what was around the decision making of not turning it on? Was there some, so anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Another quick question, is it reasonable to assume right now that punitive measures don't increase compliance
On this, on like.
with body worn video?
I don't know that I have enough of a tool to make that determination. I think. So to be frank, one of the reasons we wanted you guys, what we thought it would be helpful for you all to look at this was that. There's another case, with body worn, where the body worn cameras weren't turned on. And there was just a lot of discussion between our office and the department about whether an allegation of misconduct was appropriate in that case. And my sense from this group and from community is that body worn cameras are of vital importance and are extremely, it's just extremely important to our whole community and to this body and to my work and all these things. And so to me, it absolutely fit to go to a high level to get to an allegation over it. And so that's one reason why I wanted to talk about it here and get that perspective and honestly make sure I'm right, that this is of that high importance. So I will say, that being said, it is fairly rare for us to be reviewing something and find that this is missing, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a complaint or use of force, I mean, the glaring obvious exception being SWAT. Generally, there's video of everything we want to see.
I hope my question didn't communicate to you that this was unnecessary. I just a thought popped up actually like, well, what are the motivating factors? How do we get them to use them?
Yeah, and I had that thought in my head already, so.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
I just wanted to make sure.
Just double checking.
Yeah.
Okay.
By moving the discretion, just like you suggested.
I mean, maybe that's
how you do it.
I just think we build technology and systems around the lowest common denominator in terms of users, and humans are just, we got a lot of stuff on our mind all the time. We're emotional, we're not machines, and I don't know, different conversation. Okay, adjudication recommendations. I think you're starting to suffer it.
Yes, I don't know if any adjudication recommendation has been made by anybody, but I agree with what they did by accepting the responsibility. That's all I can say. I think.
Yeah, I thought Rob said there wasn't an adjudication because they stipulated, so I agree with them stipulating.
Wasn't it sustained, just as a question? I saw sustained written on the paper, so they admitted and it was sustained.
I wouldn't say there were recommendations, but there was an adjudication.
Sustained,
Sustained.
they violated the policy,
Yeah.
but since you didn't have to recommend, because they didn't really,
Compacted.
so yeah, I agree that it was sustained.
Mhm.
I mean, there's pretty valid proof that they didn't turn on their cameras.
Mhm.
And I appreciate that they stipulated, although I didn't know what that word meant until this week. In that context.
So I think the appropriate comment then what the auditor's office is looking for is that, yes, I agree that this was appropriate to elevate to this level of.
But then I guess I don't understand, because I saw sustained and that's an adjudication, and so there should be a recommendation. Or otherwise, what I'm saying about just stipulating and not, and you get out of it, why isn't there a
That goes to the
recommendation?
process. So I think this isn't something that we do all of that often. But in this case, it's pretty, because the allegation is, well, you didn't have your body worn and you should have, right? And so basically there's a lot of discussion with the union representation and IA and our office, and it's all kind of an agreement of, if the officer agrees that they violated policy, then this should be sustained. And so we all say yes, and then we do that. So it takes out a few of the steps. There isn't a recommendation because it's all in conversation. Yeah, Rob, what am I missing?
Oh, I just said it's not, I mean, the little part in the PowerPoint is recommendations, really.
Yeah.
I think we're arguing about semantics. We just. they
No,
just
I had a
jumped-
brain.
They
blip.
just jumped to the end and said yes.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna agree that I was confused for a moment because, oh, surprise, Alan's thinking about consequences. Cause I was thinking, cause I'm thinking about you sustain and then you recommend like what you have, but
Well, we
that's
don't
not for our purview. I
Right, we don't have
understand
to-
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
there's no argument, I guess, or no
I
discussion.
agree. No, I retract what I said. Obviously, there's no recommendations because there is an adjudication of sustain. And then what the chief recommended, who will know, not us. So,
Thank you.
sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree with what everyone said, and actually to Alan's earlier point, I guess I'm curious if in other cases, if an officer stipulates to all of the policy violations, would there not be an like, if this was maybe more serious, where's the threshold at which there would still be an investigation to understand the process that came to the decision making, or the actual, findings from us,
Yeah.
the actual first complaint,
That's a really interesting question.
You're talking lawyer strategy.
Talking
Because then we got a few in this
sentencing
room.
now.
well, not even sentencing, but just understanding the occurrence
No, I
and
think,
having more opportunity to
If you
reflect on
admit it, if you
training.
admit it, there's no point in going further.
well, I would say it hasn't, typically, we haven't offered. And well, it's an expedited process,
Mhm.
right? And so we have that hasn't been offered in things like excessive force, right? It's only offered when it's kind of a very black and white, what is the point of asking the question? Because in most cases, what I'm very interested in is mindset, is, what were you thinking? What led to this decision? Because that also has a big, impact on whether I think it should be sustained, or not, right? Because often it's just not, their thought process is not sufficiently recorded, so like, this is the avenue I have to ask those questions, right?
Mhm.
So,
Mitigating factor.
right, so sorry, I'm
And
talking this through because it's.
And they would be more likely to, or I assume they would want to be more likely because of the punishment is probably very low for something like this, is my uneducated wild guess, but versus something else, you would be more wanting to talk if there was more at stake.
Yeah.
Totally. This is just an accident.
But yeah, we definitely, this quick process is not typically offered unless it's very cut and dry, and nobody wants, yeah.
Can I ask a question in aid of what, so I think maybe what you're saying, and I kind of can see it, is sometimes we have seen examples where the investigation has led to other charges or a different understanding of an event. And so I understood your question to say, and it was kind of along what I was saying, could you confess, I did this in order to avoid scrutiny or learning more about that event and what happened? And I kind of am of an assumption that they would investigate. I don't think that they, regardless, I
Yeah.
think if it was something so serious that it could result in more charge, but we have definitely seen a progression where they open up an investigation for one thing and then suggest that they've just uncovered something else. So I was just making a cautionary tale that sometimes the use of that quick confession to the crime is by way of trying to avoid scrutiny of whatever the event is.
But if they're witnesses, you could get to it by an intake. So you could do an intake interview of other people that were involved. If you're suggesting, like I took Clay's question as like on or off, like a light bulb kind of question, not some kind of strategy, because you don't want to reveal more. But if there was more to be revealed, you would do more intake interviews and probably get to it if there's witnesses. I think you guys are asking completely different things.
Well, I just see that probably through an investigation process, if you were to continue on after someone says, yeah, I did it, you might uncover organizational learning opportunities that could be about the person, or they could be about failures in a process, like training issues with like, can you track back to when these officers were trained on this very specific thing? And maybe were they missed? And like, I think this is not the greatest case, but it just makes me fearful of other opportunities that are still kind of low level, but might, through an investigative process, unravel some organizational issues.
You should hold those thoughts. for maybe a few months from now.
Okay,
But
gotcha.
can I make one procedural comment? So the way that we're doing preliminary reviews
Mm.
now is is very robust. So a preliminary review, even like before the classification, is gonna include basically everything except for interviewing officers.
Mhm.
So all the body worn video, any witness statements from civilians, anything that's submitted through the portal, any reports, 911 calls, CAD, all of those records are going to be reviewed before it goes into the pipeline at all. So that process wouldn't be truncated, even if it gets to allegation stipulation.
Mhm.
You would still have everything except for the interviews from the officers, which is
Mhm.
like the main difference between our preliminary review and a complete investigative file. Does that?
Yeah,
Did that help?
Robust.
Right,
All the
Which,
work.
because it's
most
really
of it-
super important to know that all of those records are available for review beforehand and
Mhm.
are, would be looked, in this case, were looked at,
Mhm.
is looked at before it even goes into the pipeline.
No
That
problem.
really, the distinction, the thing that you notice in this case is that you don't see interviews with either witnesses or the officers themselves. And that's what we can't do in that sort of preliminary phase.
Mhm.
So that's really the only, not that that can't reveal things,
Mhm.
but that most of it happens anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the key thing that it would reveal to me is truthfulness stuff.
Sure.
And that like, it's stuff that I'm always very concerned about and
Yeah.
it's so big. And so in this
Yes.
case, like I think they're probably upstanding, it was a mistake or whatever, it's not a big deal, but if you truncated a process and to avoid being interviewed because you
Sure.
have had some issues and you don't really, like, there's just an opportunity for that to be not great.
And I think the training issues is another good point.
Yeah.
Like just, and that's again, not really within our control here, but it is an interesting thing to think about, like organizationally, how EPD might handle, even if the officers have stipulated, looking at it through that lens. of,
Mhm.
Are there, beyond these two officers, just general training considerations?
Totally.
I would imagine they would probably take advantage of the opportunity to remind people.
Well, that's helpful to know, so thanks for clarifying that.
Got time for auditor report?
Yeah, well, I wrote it down, so enjoy. Thank you, Lindsay. We are starting out a little bit slower than last year. I'm gonna blame or thank the ice storm. I'm not sure which to do, although we all survived it, so that was great. One thing that popped up that, earlier that I remember talking to someone about is the opportunity to do ride-alongs at dispatch. It's not often the first one that comes to mind. If you're talking about ride-alongs, it's usually thinking patrol, but dispatch ride-alongs are really interesting. I did one, it was pre-COVID now, but it was, obviously, it's, you're in a safe state. But it's amazing to experience and observe what folks at dispatch are handling and dealing with and multitasking with, and like, when we have discussion around, could dispatch like push a button and turn on that? It would be very interesting for that kind of conversation to know more about what they're experiencing. So if you're interested in that, contact our staff. I have somewhere in this book who specifically to work with to get those scheduled, but if you're interested in that, let me know and we can get that going. Otherwise, we are working on outreach. Beatrice and I had a good conversation with the folks from the Office of Equity and Community Engagement today to get moving forward on our what has always been known as the Public Safety Forum, and it may evolve into a different name. But just get going on that. I did an interview with KLCC right before the ice storm. So I don't remember what I said, but if you're interested, they interviewed chief and then me for a police reform kind of conversation kind of thing. So yeah, that's kind of all I have. We're working on annual reports and other reports and all of our reports, and Lindsay and Rob are amazing and they keep everything going, and Vicki tells me what I'm missing and doing wrong, and I'm just grateful for my team.
We appreciate you.
Oh, thank
I have a question for you. It is late.
Okay.
Oh, what about applicants for the board?
We have a lot of applicants for the board.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so Right, thank you for your.
Oh, yeah, I replied.
Alan, as he mentioned, is potentially shifting off towards police commission, so Alan has agreed kindly to serve on our selection subcommittee along with a few other folks of as you all know, per code, the mayor and I convene in a selection subcommittee, and so we have a couple of former members of CRB, we have someone from EPD, we have a lot of community members on there, and they all give their feedback on who council should bring to this fine group. So, potentially we'll have one, well, I don't get to make any decisions, but yeah, so, we are convening that next week. Tuesday, not Wednesday, Tuesday. So yeah, no, that is on its way.
Cool.
And there was something else that when you were asking me, I was thinking there was something I should say, but I don't remember what it was, so I'm sure it wasn't.
It was not important.
Okay,
All right. After closing comments, I think Bernadette's gonna start us off.
Okay, so I was looking at the closed case report. So there were a couple, probably the last page of the December closed case report. One was received October 9th, the other was received November 3rd. I think either one or both of those would be good options to look at. But obviously, if there's something about either one that wouldn't necessarily be helpful for us, I understand that, but other than that, I missed the December meeting and the January meeting, and I'll
wasn't a
hopefully be
January.
there. Yeah, right, I know. Hopefully I'll be there in March. Thank you.
I don't have anything, but I do appreciate when board members suggest cases. Makes our job easier when we select them. So thanks, Bernadette.
My closing comment is thank you for your grace and patience in my first meeting as a chair, and yeah, Alan?
My closing comment is how in the world can the second Thursday of the month of February be the 8th? I was gonna attend the police commission meeting this Thursday, and I would have been a lonely soul at the conference room at EPD. So I'm confessing my error of calendar confusion, and hopefully I won't blow my shot at becoming a police commissioner.
February is a
But
hard month.
otherwise, I missed the chance to reapply here, so it's all good. So happy Valentine's Day, and for everybody, I hope you have a good day, and thank you.
Yeah, happy new year too. Yeah.
No closing comment.
Good job, you did it.
All right.
Maybe you should wait public comment.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, right, sorry.
So we had one and they dropped off, so there's nobody on Zoom anymore in public.
And I asked our in-person guests if they wanted to make comment at the beginning, they both declined, so I think you're safe.
Okay. Good adjourn.
We can adjourn now.
Good job.
All right.